Hello, and welcome to the MoonBound Podcast. I'm Julia, and I'd like to welcome you into my home. I'd like to take a minute to thank all of the returning viewers for their support and their continued watching. It really means a lot to me. I'd also like to thank you if you're new and you're checking this out for the first time. I am coming to you from Wisconsin, where I live with my family and one crazy kitty cat who will probably come up onto screen at some point today because whenever I'm talking to the camera, he thinks I'm talking to him. I have an almost finished object today. My split back tank has sleeves and is ready for blocking. It's really kind of hard to display. So none of the ends are tucked in because it was recommended that they be tucked in after blocking. I'm not entirely certain how I feel about that. I think it doesn't really matter, to be honest. But in an effort not to make another mistake on this, I'm reading the instructions very, very carefully. So I have tried it on. It does fit. It is just a tiny bit shorter than maybe I expected it to turn out, but I do have almost an entire ball left. Now, after I block it, and I'm going to block this section particularly hard so that it stays out nice like that. Let's do that in both directions so you can see it. I'm going to tuck in all my tails, and then I overlap, right over left, the back pieces. And that is the only connection that happens in the back. Let me see if I can. It will hang like this on me. And it also wants for me to single crochet around the outside edges of the neck hole and the armholes, which I think is a great idea. Not only are they curving, but the decreases and the shaping look a little bit abrupt, especially as the only interest that's going on in most of the piece is the colorway. The whole time I was thinking, I'm going to have to do something to smooth that, make sure it doesn't roll over like that. So I'm glad that the designer paid attention to that. She did call for a 3-needle bind off at these tops, which I'm assuming is for structural integrity and giving it a little bit of extra support. It doesn't look the best, but I think it's probably a wise choice design-wise. Give it some strength there where it's going to have most of the pressure taken on. The only thing I'm trying to decide now is if I want to do that single crochet in the body blue color or in the white. And I am currently leaning toward the white just because the edging elsewhere is white on the bottom and on the back. And I think that would look sharp, but it also might look a little distracting. So if you have an opinion, shoot it my way. If not, it's probably going to go that way. Although, you never know with me. I may have changed my mind by the time I get around to doing it. So there's that. I'm going to block that out later tonight. And I plan to have it entirely done this month. And it is the 21st. So that's completely doable. I was fairly monogamous since the last time you talked to me about what project I was working on for knitting. So almost nothing else got any knitting time done. I did do a couple of more rows on the socks, and they're going to be my primary focus moving forward. I have found that my feet really like hand knit socks. Not in the way they did before my injury where, oh, that's kind of nice. Those are extra cozy. Those are my favorite socks. Now those are the only socks my feet are willing to tolerate. And I don't really have a lot of hand knit socks because while I made quite a few pair last year, or quite a few for me, maybe not quite a few for everyone else, but I gave most of them away. And so I'm wearing these socks and washing these socks and wearing these, like I have 2 pair. And I need a few more. So I'm going to focus on getting these done so that I can wear them. So just to refresh everybody's memory, these are the Union Square sock pattern by Knitting Expat Designs, which is Mina Phillip, and it is Knit Picks Lost Lake Heather tweed. Lost Lake Heather, which is a Donegal tweed, and it is really soft and really pretty, and I really love it. And it's working out well. I just haven't focused on it. I did also spend some time working on the shawl, and I took it with me to swimming class with the kids. No, to violin. And the whole time I was sitting there working on it, my leg was really hurting, and I was really tired, and I kept thinking, this feels like I'm doing something wrong. And I kept looking down, and I was looking down at the edge. Maybe right here. Yeah, I think it is right there. And it just looked strange to me, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong, And finally I just set it down, and I put it away, and I just sat for the rest of the lesson. And I got home, and I'm like, I don't know what was wrong with me. There's nothing wrong. I examined that edge thoroughly. I couldn't find a problem. And I'm like, I can cruise along. I've only got 15 more repeats till, and it's just long. It's not. It's all knitting except for a couple of spots. So I was like, I'm gonna cruise through this. And I got most of the way through one row, going this way. And then I found the mistake. Which if I go like this, should be fairly easy for you all to see. These holes should all line up as they do on this side. But I put the eyelet in the wrong spot by one stitch on the other side. So that needs to be ripped out. I will probably take care of ripping this back so that I can have this as my carry around with me project, simply because right now it is absolutely no thinking knitting. Maybe I should use just a tiny bit more thinking, because almost every stitch is knit. Whereas I do have to pay attention to a row count on the socks. Not that it's a complicated row count, just that, sometimes you get into the groove. And so there is that. This is Glow Beauty from Within with her Pan is Back colorway. And it is the Multnomah shawl. And I'm hoping that the next time I show it to you, there will be more to see. And less holes in the wrong spot. So there is that. I did cast on. You'll notice I'm not showing you a cast on. I did cast on with this for the Venezia sweater, shawl. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but I showed it to you last time. And I talked about the size 11 needles that I bought. They're nice needles. There's nothing wrong with these needles. They're the wrong size for this yarn pattern. These are an 11. I am probably going to go down to, I think I took out a 9 next. Because this yarn is thick and thin, it just can't, it can't do it. It looked really strange. And I'm not set on the 9. I may have to go smaller, which is going to produce a totally different shawl. But I think the patterning will hold up. It just won't be as big. And I really do like that. The other thing I may do is I have one skein of mohair. And I may decide to hold them double. And I think that would take care of some of the this is not quite big enough issue. The other thing that I found was I was shopping with my mother. And we went into Hobby Lobby, which I do not normally do. I'm not into revisionist history. But Mom needed some seed beads, and they are the closest store, and I was really tired, and she doesn't have any problem with shopping there. And so I took her in there. And while she was looking for one of the things she needed, I happened to look over at the needles. And they carried Knitter's Pride size 11s for $4. So, yeah. sometimes your belief systems cause you to spend more money. That's okay. But I wish spending the more money had been useful. I have finished the Lincoln Longwell spin. And I think it turned out absolutely lovely. So, it is 2-ply. It is probably fingering. I didn't actually do any of the metrics on this yet. I'll put those up in the show notes. But I want to reskein it just because I washed it rather aggressively. And I am not, when you wash it, it shrinks. You just lose a little bit. And the method I go about determining the length of my yarn is wrapping it around an innie that is 2 yards long and then counting each strand and multiplying by 2. It's nothing fancy. It does produce an approximate length and it works really well. However, if you do that and then you wash it, because of that shrinkage factor, you lose a little bit of length. And usually it's not any big deal. And I don't feel like it's a super big deal. But because I was recently reading about skeins that lost quite a bit in that process and really dramatically affected their yardage. And because I sell my yarn, I want to be very careful that I'm giving an accurate yardage total, because if I were the one who bought a skein of yarn and it said it was 200 yards and it was only 180, I would be really upset. I might not notice if my project needed less than that and it worked out, but if it didn't. Additionally, most of my handspun, there's no more. That is it. It is that one skein. Very occasionally, if it's something natural, I can redo it. But usually I can't. And so there would be no way to fix it. So I am looking at changing my control methods so that I can be certain that if I put down a number for yardage that is the amount that's there, or it is actually slightly less than what is there, because I don't want to disappoint anyone. It's not a big deal. Like, in all the ones I've looked at, I've been fine. But there's a couple of other ways you can do it. You can use a McMoran yarn balance, and I have one, and I find it to be very, well, it wastes some yarn. So there's a little part of me that's like, really? I gotta start out wasting a 2-foot section of yarn? And then what it is doing is you're laying this piece of yarn across the scale and slowly snipping the ends of the yarn until it balances with the scale. And then there's a chart for how you determine how much yarn would be in a pound, how much of your yarn would be in a pound, and then you just weigh your skein and you calculate that ratio, and that's how long your skein is. And it's considered to be fairly accurate. I've never heard of anyone who had any problem that wasn't related to screwing up the measuring. So you just have to be careful, and you get a fairly accurate thing. But you do have to weigh some yarn. Another way to do it is to get a fishing line counter. They make fancy ones for yarn. But you get a fishing line counter, depth counter, and hook it up. It doesn't really like anything above a DK because they're designed to deal with fishing line and fishing wire. But it does a pretty good job. It does a little bit of screwy things with the tension sometimes. So you have to be careful of your tension while you're measuring it that way. So there is that. And here's a skein. And I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. And, a random discussion on how yarn is measured. Um, I have another quick ebook review for you. This is The Knitter's Year by Debbie Bliss, and it is a whole bunch of small projects. It's 52 make-in-a-week projects, quick gifts and seasonal knits. And it is broken down by season, and there's not a lot of, in fact, there's almost no extraneous. That word that I can't say right now. Extra. We'll just use extra. There's not a lot of extra discussion in it. It's simply, here is a pattern, here's how you go. So I picked a couple that I'm going to do and show. Aren't those egg cozies neat? I have a total thing for egg cozies, as I showed you an egg cozy last time as well. I think my daughters would absolutely love these necklaces. I even marked it this time. And I'm changing my mind on that one. And I think these are really, really pretty. Votive holders. Votive candle holders. And I love these little flags. Especially as I was reading through this as the Olympics started, I thought this would have been a great thing to have done in time. My daughters colored U.S. flags and Canadian flags. We were supporting Canada as well. And were waving them whenever the appropriate team came out. That was just the two countries that they picked. I probably would have done a couple extra flags if I were the one waving flags, but I wasn't. So I'm thinking that I'll do up a bunch of these. I really like this cute little knitting bag, and it looks like it's a great way to use up scraps. That is what it seems to be intended for. And I really like this Christmas napkin ring idea. So there's that. This is a library book. It's going back after I make some photocopies and some notes, and it's just a cute little book with a whole bunch of different projects, and that gives you kind of a through the seasons idea of what she's got going in there. It's a nice book. I don't have any other projects started. I did get the wool back from the Guild's Wool Potluck. And I am certain that I can spin it into a nice lace weight something. But I'm not really happy. It is kind of a flat gray. If you don't know what a wool potluck is, it's very similar to a regular potluck in which everyone brings some wool. All right, maybe that's not a regular potluck. But in any event, everyone brought in some wool that they were willing to throw into the cause, and everyone's wool is weighed as they bring it, and that's recorded along with what the breed is. I sent in some Targhee, and I sent in some Lincoln, and some alpaca. And I sent in a little over 30, 35, probably 36 ounces, something like that. I have it written down somewhere. And then everyone's wool goes all in one container, and it gets sent off to a mill, and they process it and send you back roving, and then you get back out what you put in minus the mill loss. And then the cost for having it milled is divided accordingly to how much of the total you got. So I got 29.7 ounces back, which worked up to being pretty much the same amount in money. And we used a different mill this year than we used last time. And I actually don't know the name of the mill, which is probably good, although I'm going to find it so that I don't use their services. She is apparently new to milling and just getting herself started up, so this could simply be a beginner's error. And that is perfectly reasonable. And the fiber is fairly well organized. The problem is the staple length for the whole thing, for all 10 pounds we got back, is about 1 inch. I know that my Lincoln had a staple length of 8 inches. I know that my Targhee had a staple length of 3 inches. I know that none of the fibers that were submitted had a staple length of 1 inch, and in some cases less than 1 inch. So either she really, really abused this, or she deliberately cut the fibers without asking the person who was in charge of this project. Because that person was very, very surprised when one of the gals at the meeting started trying to spin with it and was having difficulty doing the technique that was our program last time. And she said, I can't make this work. And I immediately opened mine and I went, oh, well, I know why you're having trouble doing that technique with this. The stable length is really, really short. And I can still use it, and I'll make some beautiful yarn out of it. But the potluck last year produced some roving that was similar in color, because it always ends up being kind of a grayish or a brownish, or, but it was kind of I called it unicorn potluck when I spun it up, because it looked like what an artist might depict the coat of a unicorn to look like. It was kind of, there was some blue and there was some shimmer, and it was just really pretty. And this is a lot flatter. But that didn't have a short staple length. I mean, not a super short staple length. And usually you don't end up with something that is shorter in the length of the fiber than the shortest one you put in. So I have 30 ounces of wool to spin that has a staple length of 1 inch or slightly less. And then I probably have to over dye it because the color is real flat. If I was thinking when I looked at it before I had checked the stable length, because I probably wouldn't have checked it until I went to spin it, if people hadn't immediately started trying to spin it. I was thinking, well, I can add some stellina or some angel hair to this and, up the sparkle factor, and I can make this work. And now I think I'm going to be dyeing it. It's okay. I mean, the other problem is it smells really bad. Like, really, really bad. So that is likely not going to be a pleasant spin, because I can wash it after it's yarn. Oh well. Chances are it'll turn out beautiful anyway. But I was kind of excited to get it back. And it is not particularly exciting now. I may try to spin up some of it right away just to get me past this. But I'm a little disappointed. So there's that. We are going to do card weaving as our next program for that guild. And even though I just learned I'm the one doing the presentation, in part because I have a project right now and I said that I would pop it up onto the guild's blog, and so everyone could see what they needed and understand what all of the equipment was before they came to the meeting, so that they would have the ability to have everything ready, and that'll be good. So I'm going to be doing more card weaving between now and then, so that I have more than just one sample to show everybody. I do really enjoy it. I'm probably going to see if I can't get some fancier cards. This weekend I am going to Midwest Fiber Frolic. I think that's what they're calling it. I don't remember. Something with the word Midwest and fiber. In Milwaukee. And it is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to go on Friday. And that I'm excited for that. That'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing the people from Sprite Whimsy are there, going to be there. Bumblebee Acres is going to be there. So I already know that I'm coming home with a pretty new spindle and some pretty roving. I don't typically buy braided roving candy. I don't do it because I would much prefer to buy a whole fleece. And there is only so much budget that can be used on this sort of thing, in theory. And you just get more fiber if you buy the whole fleece. But I can't spend all day spinning, and so something that's ready to go, something that is pretty and inspiring. Yeah, at least 1 4-ounce braid is coming home. So there should be more spinning in the future here. I think I'm going to let you go. It's almost time for me to start packing up and going and getting the children. And we have swimming tonight, so I have to get them home and get them snacked and get them fed. I have to get the snack in so that we can have dinner early and still, have them eat it, rather than have them not be particularly hungry at dinner and then be starving after swimming. They'll be starving after swimming anyway, but that is that thing. So I am going to say goodbye, and I hope that all your projects are going well and you're having 0 disappointments right now. Happy crafting.